Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's session, we are continuing our investigations into drugs. A big shout out to Howie for requesting this video. I don't know if that's your real name, that's just your name on YouTube. You know who you are. But yeah, thank you for requesting this video. Please do keep your requests coming in because it helps me focus. As you know, there are so many legislations out there. So it'd be great if you guys could let me know what you want me to cover because this is what I do the videos for. So, like I said, we are picking up from where we left off from simple possession in drugs. Now, if this is the first video you're watching in relation to drugs on this channel, we'll have a little quick recap. So we looked at categories A, B and C in relation to drugs. Now, these categories are based on the effects that those have on your body. Your category A are your biggies, your category C are the ones that are still bad, but they have less of an impact on you. Category Bs are the ones that are in the middle, so things like cannabis. But when you're looking at class A's, you are looking at heroin, crack, all the really bad stuff that's going to have a tremendously negative impact on your body. Okay, so we looked at classifications. We looked at simple possession, where it's unlawful to have a controlled drug on your possession. So to unlawfully have a controlled drug in your possession is an offence. That's simple possession. So things that could impact that, or whether you've got it on you for a reason, maybe you've been prescribed it, perhaps you're a doctor or somebody going about your business and that's why you've got it on you. In terms of possession then, there are two elements that you need for proof of possession. So it might be that something's in your control. So when you think about possession, it could be on you right now, on your person, or it could be in somewhere that you have control over, maybe your house or your vehicle. So to prove that then, there are two different elements, and that would be proof that it is in there, in my control, and that I know it's there. An example, let's think, if I'm looking at my car out the window. So my car, let's say I'm in my car, and I lend my car to somebody over the weekend, my brother, as he's insured, etc. Lend it to him and I go off on holidays, look after my car for me. Unbeknownst to me, he suddenly decides to start selling drugs from the boot of my car, and he leaves them in there by accident. Now I'm driving along the day after in my car, hi everybody, and I get pulled over for, I don't know, flat tire or something. And while they're just checking out the checks, just have a look in my boot for whatever reason, and there they find a lot of cannabis. And I'm like, that's not mine. It's not what it looks like, I promise. And they're like, really? But there are two elements, remember. So the first one being that it's under my control, which it is, it's in my car. But then there's the knowledge that it's there. I have no idea that it's there. But that's for me to prove when we go to court. So yeah, that's simple possession. Now we are escalating up. We're looking at sections 4 through 6 of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. And we're going to start by looking at production. So in terms of producing drugs then, I'm going to read a little bit of legislation straight from the Blackstone's Policing Handbook 2020. It's, as you know, one of my favourite reads. I do need to buy a new one. Blackstone's, do the right thing, send me some new books. So we're looking now, obviously, at production. It's an offence to produce a controlled drug or to be concerned in the production without a licence from the Secretary of State. That sits under Section 4, subsection 2 of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. What does it mean to be concerned with the production then? I mean, do you have to care about it? I mean, that's what concern means generally, right? No. This could be maybe you're financing it, you're providing chemicals for this cultivation. Perhaps it's in a building that you own and obviously you know about it. So that's how you are concerned with it. That's still an offence, even if you're not doing the mixing up yourself. Okay, interesting fact, right? And under this power as well, you can confiscate stuff. So when you're looking at cannabis cultivations, people like to prosecute under this section 4, subsection 2, rather than cannabis cultivation, because you can seize things, you can confiscate stuff. One for the books to remember. Now then, when you're looking at charging, depending on whether it's class A, B or C, so remember the differences. C, still bad, but B, A, whoa, that's how drugs offences are. So when you get to class A, you know it is bad. Now in terms of sentencing, this reflects the severity of the drugs. Offences in relation to the production of drugs, of controlled drugs, are triable either way. Now that means it can either sit at the magistrates or at Crown Court, depending on the severity of what you are doing. If you're looking at your Class C drugs, you get a much lesser sentence than you would at a Class A. Okay, so let's have a look at what it says in Blackstone's in relation to these offences. So if you're charged as a summary offence, Class C, you'll be looking at 3 months in prison if you go to prison. Class B, 6 months, and Class A, again, 6 months. And that's a summary offence. So there's not much of the production. Let's think of it that way, because we're looking at the impact. When you're looking at magistrates versus Crown, you're looking at the impact that behaviour has on society. If it's a big impact and it's a big negative impact, you're in Crown. If it's kind of minor, we're in magistrates. That's how it works. That's a triable, either way model. Now then, we're going into Crown Court now. Oh dear. So we already know we're in the big doo-doo. For Class C, you're looking at 5 years in prison. These are your maximum lengths, okay? That's Class C, 5 years. Class B, 14 years. You know, you actually get less for murder sometimes. And Class A, you're looking at life in prison. So don't do it, people. That's what you get for producing drugs. I hope that none of you are considering that as a secondary employment or as your main employment, because there are much more wholesome ways to earn a living. Now we are going to move on to supply. And supplying drugs, sometimes people are stupid and they don't realise what they're doing or the severity of their actions. But let's move on, like I said, to supply. There are 2 elements I want to look at in relation to supply. So there's the, obviously, supply offence, and then we're looking at possession with the intent to supply. Oh dear. Now, possession with the intent to supply is probably one of the more popular ones that you'll come across. It's certainly that common that it's popped up in my, can't find it, bear with me, my book box, in my points to prove book. Now, these are like gold dust. If you can get your hands on one of these when you're in training, then you are very lucky. I mean, this one's kind of out of date now. Let's see if it's got a year in this one. It's very old anyway. So it's that old that it's popped up in my points to prove book. It's got my old nickname in there, look, lovely. Right, okay, so we're looking at supply offences. In order for me to get this bang right, I'm going to read the legislation straight from the book. That way, if you're using this to revise, I'm not telling you absolute rubbish. So, as mentioned, we're in the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, and this stuff sits under Section 4. So, it is an offence to unlawfully supply or offer to supply a controlled drug to another, or to be concerned in the supplying of such a drug to another, or to be concerned in making an offer to supply a controlled drug to another. So that's quite simple, really, isn't it? So when we said unlawfully again, and obviously I mentioned about doctors, vets or whatever may have controlled drug in their possession for their occupation, that they're using it for work. I mean, if they're taking, you know, a lot of morphine home for a party, that's different. But if they're in the course of their duties, then they've got a lawful reason, haven't they? And they'll have a licence of authority under the Secretary of State. They have a licence for that. So to supply or offer to supply a controlled drug to another. So that can mean more than simply transferring from one person to another by sale. So it could be that you give it to somebody at a party. You might be, I don't know if you are as old as I am, or if you remember these kind of terminologies and stuff from the 90s and 2000s. There used to be this game that people used to play at parties called Around the World, where they'll pass like a joint around to each other. That itself is supplying drugs, right? Even though it's for free and you're giving it to your friends, you're supplying, guys. For the full offence of supplying, the substance must be a controlled drug. However, for offering to supply, it does not matter if the substance is not a controlled drug. For an attempt to supply, the substance does not need to be a controlled drug either. You just need to think it is. So if you think you are supplying somebody with the thing, and maybe you've been given some herbs or something, but you think it's cannabis, you're trying to supply it, offence. Yeah, so thinking about that supply again then, so like I said, at a party, people are giving out their drugs. Yeah, it's an offence. Don't do it. So be concerned in the supplying of such a drug to another. So in a similar way to the concern of production, this includes some examples here for transporting or packages the drugs ready for supply. So the drug must be a controlled drug. It's not sufficient for this offence merely to believe it is a controlled drug. So to be concerned, you must think that it is a drug. Okay, so to be concerned in making an offer to supply a controlled drug to another. So in contrast to what I've just mentioned earlier, a person can commit an offence of making an offer to supply when a substance is not a controlled drug, or if there's no drug to supply. So if you think that you are doing it, then it's important that we catch that as well. So it says here in the Blackstone's book, people who are sent to find prospective purchasers, and it is important that those people can also be prosecuted. So say if I'm trying to find someone to buy some drugs, then that would be an offence. That is supply. Honestly, it's quite simple when we're looking at drugs. So let's just run through that bit again without all the bump at the side. So it's an offence to unlawfully supply or offer to supply a controlled drug to another, or to be concerned at the supplying of such a drug to another, or to be concerned in making an offer to supply a controlled drug to another. Simple. Okay, now we're moving on to possession with the intent to supply. As I've mentioned, this is a biggie. You're going to get this a lot out at district or wherever it is you work. I know people call things different whereabouts in the UK you are policing, the borough, the district, whatevs. Wherever you are policing, you're going to get a lot of possession with the intent to supply. This sits under Section 5, subsection 3 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. Now then, unlike Section 4, possession with the intent to supply, you must actually have a controlled drug on you that you are supplying. However, it doesn't have to be the drug that you think it is. So you might think you've got on you some MDMA and you are trying to supply that, but in actual fact you're supplying cocaine or amphetamines or whatever. It's still a controlled drug. Whether or not you think it's MDMA or not, it still is a controlled drug. So in terms of possession with the intent to supply, then there are some points to prove. And I'm getting these from my little points to prove manual. The offences are the same, are great, but remember that, things do update over time. So when we are looking at possession with intent to supply, then, to ignore the coffee stain on there, it's very old. So it's an offence for a person to have a controlled drug in their possession, whether lawfully or not, with the intent to supply to another. So we mentioned before in terms of possession, if a police officer has recovered this drug and they take it to the property stores, if a doctor has this controlled drug on them for their medical purposes or whatever, then you've got an excuse, having a lawful excuse for possession. However, if you then decide on your way home, I'm a bit skinned, it's getting towards Christmas, won't mind a couple of extra quid, you decide to sell those drugs on instead of taking them to the property store, you commit an offence. Likewise, if you're a doctor trying to make a little bit of money, or just get your friends on drugs, have a little bit of party, then also you commit an offence. The points to prove here. So you've got to prove that it's a possession of a controlled drug, obviously. And you've got to say whether the name of the drug, whether it's class A, B or C. And there's got to be an intent to supply. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know. So possession, you've unlawfully got a controlled drug in your possession. And that possession could be you've got it right now, or it could be in something you've got control of, like your car or your house. Don't forget you've got that possession, you need to have those two elements in it. So it's in your control and you know it's there. Sorted. Production, it's unlawful to produce or be concerned in the production of drugs without authority from the Secretary of State. In terms of supplying it, it's unlawful to supply, attempt to supply, be concerned with the supplying of this drug, or offer to supply. In terms of possession with the intent to supply, it's unlawful to have it on you, whether you've lawfully got it or not, to then intend to supply it. Whew. That is it. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for sending these requests in. Please do keep sending them in because, yeah, like I said, it really helps. Thank you so much for all of you who are watching these videos and liking and subscribing to this channel. It's my goal to get to 1,000 and we are so close. It's unbelievable. But thank you so much. Until next time, stay safe, look after each other, and please don't commit any crimes.